India was brilliant. When the British began conquering India in the 17th century, little piece, they captured basically two itty-bitty little pieces on the west coast, and the next thing you know, they're just gobbling up whole chunks of India. When they start, India was 23% of the world's GDP. Basically, one out of every $4 being made on the planet was being made in India. India was industrialized. So you all were taught, because I was taught the same thing, that the Industrial Revolution started in the 18th century, basically in England. That's not true. The Industrial Revolution started somewhere between 750 and 800 in the Arab world. What happened in the 18th century is the English began using steam power for transportation purposes. They began applying steam power to boats. And then they eventually realized, oh wow, we can put it on a vehicle, on a track, and they began doing railroads too. And then they realized, wow, we can put steam power in factories, and we can automate factories. So when we talk about the Industrial Revolution, what we really mean is the steam-powered phase of the Industrial Revolution. That the English did innovate. That really is their thing. But by that point, we'd already had 9 centuries of slow industrialization rolling across the planet, starting in the Middle East and expanding out. So that's also one of the causes of World War II, right, is the industrialization of the planet. Another one is capitalism. Another one is nationalism. Another factor is imperialism. So this story has all those pieces. And what the British managed to do with India was transfer its GDP to England. When England let India go, let is a strong word. When India got its independence post-World War II, when the British realized they couldn't hold on to it any longer, India was 4% of the world's GDP. The English had so successfully plundered India that they had effectively transferred those 19 percentage points to England. That's the genius of what the English had pulled off. They had literally deindustrialized India and then industrialized England instead. So, for example, India was one of the world's largest cotton producers. The big cotton producers were the United States, right? The US South, Egypt, India. That was where most of the world's cotton was being generated. So the British end up conquering India. They've got access to that cotton even after they'd lost us. But they can still buy our cotton. It's not like we're not going to sell it to them. So they didn't really lose us. And they're still making money off of us because, for all intents and purposes, we're still hooked into their economy. Indians made their own clothing out of that cotton. So the English ban India from making its own clothing, and then they make factories in England that make that cotton clothing, and then they sell traditional Indian clothing to India. They were making traditional Indian clothing in England and then selling it to the Indians after banning the Indians from producing their own clothing. So this is what the imperialist genius event that the English pull off that makes them the greatest empire the world had seen until us, right? We're the greatest empire. I know you think, no, we didn't go conquer and annex everything. That's true. So the English owned 40% of the world. We don't, obviously, but our military is in 75% of the world's countries. So I think 75% means we punked that. So we're now the greatest empire. In any case, the British will just get win after win after win. They'll grab Egypt, they grab Southern Africa, right? And they put together this really crazy empire that stretches into Asia. They have Malaysia and Singapore, they have Hong Kong, and then of course they still have Canada. They make a foray into South America, they're defeated, but they grab a piece of Central America, Belize. And so this empire sprawls across the planet.